Finish him. Or her?
Welcome. And today we'll dive into the ProRevenge story and reactions to the post from 360 Entertainment titled, "That's Not Your Car, Lady." Hi, this is Derek. I just put the Drama Llama, Fred, back in his pen so that I can do this quick video for you with some of the stuff that Fred found on Reddit earlier today. Oh boy, let's get ready for some deep-seated revenge. 360 Entertainment posted, "That's not your car, lady." So this happened around 2008. My buddy Brock had gotten out of the military after 10 years. He'd started in the Marines but transitioned into the Army for the last 4 years before buying a house in Texas. When he got out, he did a variety of jobs before landing a gig with a repo service. He worked there for a year and had a lot of wild stories. But this one sticks out the most as he helped a fellow soldier get revenge on an evil ex. Brock was at the office speaking with his manager, whom I'll refer to as Karen. Now this particular Karen had a lot of Karen-like qualities but was a force for good, if you can believe that. While they were talking, they saw a young man enter the office. They immediately noticed he had 2 black eyes and an arm was in a sling. The young man, whose name I unfortunately never learned but I'll call Ben, asked how hard it would be for them to help repossess his car. Karen called her daughter in, Karen Jr., and had her pour Ben a cup of coffee. Karen then asked Ben to tell her a story. Ben began with telling her that he had just returned from a deployment. He had been dating a local girl that lived outside of the famous Fort Hood. Not a good idea, by the way, before the deployment. Thanks to a previous deployment, he had managed to get himself a used black Dodge Charger, which was his baby. He further explained that shortly after buying the car he had met the local girl, who for the sake of the story I'll call Morgan. Morgan was always asking to drive his car but he would always decline. When he was getting ready for his deployment, Morgan repeatedly asked if she could borrow the car but he kept saying no. After much needling he relented, but on the condition that she take care of his apartment until he comes back from rest and relaxation leave. She agreed. Ben left for his deployment while Morgan took care of his place. When Ben came back for leave, he found his apartment immaculate. He pulled his car from storage, drove to Morgan's. He spent a few days with her before handing her the keys and heading to his home state to visit family before returning to his deployment. He returned again from his deployment and found nothing but trouble. When he walked into his apartment, he found a layer of dust on just about every surface. It was almost like no one had been there in months. When he checked his bedroom, he'd found his room had been torn apart. All of his drawers had been searched and upturned. He tried to call Morgan but never received an answer. He located his safe, which was hidden, and found it hadn't been touched. He then grabbed his spare key from the safe, called a buddy of his, and they went to Morgan's. As they pulled up to Morgan's, he saw a car there that he initially didn't recognize, but as they got closer he realized it was his baby. Morgan had the car painted hot pink and put 24-inch spinners on it. He tried the key just to make sure and the lights flickered as it unlocked. While his buddy laughed, Ben went to the front door and Morgan answered. He asked what happened to his car and she responded, "It's my car now." Ben walked away and hopped in his hot pink mess. As he started it, 4 large dudes came out of Morgan's house, one with a baseball bat, and yanked Ben out of his car. They proceeded to beat the crap out of him in the driveway before his friend intervened, pulling his conceal and carry pistol on the group. He then took Ben to the hospital. I'm honestly not sure if the cops were called on this. I'd assume yes, but even then Ben said his friend drove by Morgan's house a handful of times while he was in the hospital at random times and the car was never there. Karen stared at Ben for a bit before asking for the paperwork. Ben handed it to her and Karen had a smile form on her face. She then asked Ben for Morgan's phone number. Ben gave it but wasn't aware of what was about to happen. Karen handed the phone to Karen Jr., who then dialed the number. Karen Jr. then began speaking to Morgan, telling her that they'd met at one of the local clubs and wanted to know if she was down to party that night. Apparently Morgan agreed and the plan was set. Brock parked his tow truck at the club and waited. Sure enough, Morgan showed up with the pink monster, parked it, and went inside with some girlfriends. Brock gave them 5 minutes before he stealthily drove up to the car and hooked it up. As he was pulling out with the pink monster, Morgan walked out of the club. She saw her car in the tow truck and began trying to flag Brock down, but he was already out of there. The next day it was business as usual at the office when Morgan called. She was furious that her car was stolen by them and wanted it back. Karen, using her best customer service voice, told her if she had the registration she could come pick it up. Morgan began screaming louder that she was gonna call the cops, at which point Karen sarcastically told her please do, then hung up on her. As this phone call was going on, Brock happened to look out the window and saw Morgan standing next to a car in a vacant lot, throwing what appeared to be a temper tantrum. After Karen hung up, Brock watched her get in the car on the passenger side. Karen then looked out the window and had Brock verify it was her. She then began to smirk. Karen then proceeded to call the owner of the property Morgan and her friend were occupying. She told the owner about the car and asked if he wanted it towed. The owner okayed it. Brock then drove his truck over to the ladies in the car and introduced himself. They tried to explain that they were waiting for Morgan's boyfriend, but Brock insisted they weren't allowed to park there. They argued and called him every name in the book. Brock then hooked up their car and lifted it partially off the ground, forcing the two to exit the vehicle. They tore into him until he showed them the tow order. While this back and forth was going on, Ben arrived at the office and Morgan saw him walk in. She ran to the office door and Brock proceeded to lower the car. When Brock went back to the office, all hell had broken loose. Morgan apparently tried to snag the keys back from Ben, but he pocketed them. She began to hit him in his hurt arm and warned Ben that she'd call her friends to finish the job if she didn't get her keys back. Karen Jr. had already called the cops at this point and Brock got in between Ben and Morgan, even telling Morgan to try hitting him to find out what would happen. Morgan then tried to play the pity card and said she only wanted the keys to get her laptop out for school. Karen asked Ben to hand the keys over to Brock so he could grab the laptop. Brock retrieved the laptop from the car and, as he was handing it over, she rushed to aggressively grab it but knocked it from Brock's hands. Completely furious at this point, Morgan accused Brock of dropping the computer on purpose and threatened to sue. The cops then arrived and Morgan began her sob story again, telling the police that they stole her car. The police questioned Karen and Karen gave her a casual smirk while asking if they wanted to see the security videos. The police watched and listened as Morgan punched Ben several times, and heard the threats she made about sending her friends after him. The police then turned to Morgan, who had turned ghost white at this point. She tried to back her way to the door but the police stopped her. They proceeded to ask about the car, Ben's injuries, and who she planned on sending after him. She initially denied everything but they already had evidence on her beating him up. She was arrested and Ben got his car back. After the cops left, Ben admitted he didn't want to be seen in a car that looked like it was advertising Pepto-Bismol and planned on trading it in for a gas, tires, and oil. We later heard through the grapevine that the 4 guys who beat up Ben were arrested. Morgan had ratted them out. Brock had a few more stories but none of them were nearly as good as this one. Edit, darn, barely an hour and it's blown up a bit. Thanks guys. Also, too lazy, didn't read. Evil girlfriend tried to steal a car from her boyfriend. Had him beat up, but a friendly Karen helps get it back. Edit 2, wow, thanks for all the support guys. I love that so many have enjoyed this story. So I've had a few people try to refute this story and I assure you this story is true. I have no reason to lie to anyone about this. Also, some people are asking how this is considered ProRevenge. While Ben didn't personally get the revenge, Karen was the instrument of Morgan's destruction. She set Morgan up to lose the car after Ben and his friend couldn't locate it on their own. Morgan's fate was more or less her own doing. She believed that she could strong-arm an injured man with multiple witnesses, while making threats. Also, while gang activity was fairly high in the Killeen, TX area, I'm not 100% on if they were connected to any gangs. I just want to throw that last part out there. What are your thoughts on 360 Entertainment's revenge story? Please share in the comments below. Now let's go on to hear how some Reddit members reacted to this story. Tempest Wolf reacted with, for those not seeing the revenge, she was arrested for assault. And is probably persona non grata with anyone she knows. Because she ratted out people who did her dirty work. Which probably means she's going to get beat. KMJ420 reacted with, I'd be packing my bags and moving if I was her. After she got out of jail if she went. Depending on what kind of deal she got for snitching on her friends. They probably dropped a couple of charges. Maybe the assault charge from the repo shop. They would have been charging her with assault, probably blackmail. which I believe is a federal level crime, conspiracy to commit murder, grand theft auto, and whatever the charges would be for having her buddies bash in. I'm betting that she was looking at around 40 years in prison. She's a woman though. Plead out to 5, got out in 2. I'd be worried about the people who had no problem going after her boyfriend with a baseball bat. I wouldn't be surprised if anyone served more than 6 months. The guys could have used a. We believed her when she said someone was stealing her car. So we ran off what we thought was a car thief. She could have said he totally gave me the car and then took it back while breaking up with me. I was upset by the breakup and how he treated me over the car. Judges would have likely handed out minimum sentences if these were first offenses. Bloomin' Blocks reacted with. Of course, Crazy ratted them out. This is why you don't stick your dirk in Crazy. There should be Dragons reacted with. Well, I was sure tickled pink by that ending. Yay, she really dug her own hole and had enough room for company. B-Dubs29 reacted with. Lol, I'm gonna send my friends to finish the job unless you give me the car is stolen back. As if the police would have just handed over the car even if she hadn't hit. And threatened him without checking registration. I'm so glad her and those 4 idiots went to prison. She probably should watch her back when they get out of jail though. I don't see them being too happy for being rated out for something she had them do. That is why they always ask for registration. If you don't have it, they can run the VIN on the vehicle. If you refuse, the cops can detain you until they get the whole story straightened out. That's the role of the cops. Sometimes they take a break from beating people, I guess. The Erode Specs reacted with. Why didn't he call the cops and report his car stolen in the first place? Because it didn't happen. No single soldier is gonna pay for rent for an apartment when they deploy. Not when the army stores your stuff, and your car, for free. And you also can get your car back until the unit returns from deployment. Not just your mid-tour leave. Plus this guy would be, I assume, lower enlisted. So unless he was a geographical bachelor, he wouldn't be paid to live off post. And trust me, no lower enlisted can afford an apartment by themselves without basic allowance for housing. Besides that, is no one else confused about the crazy ex receiving a phone call from a random stranger? And agreeing to go clubbing with her? Like, is this a normal thing that I've somehow missed? You greatly underestimate the lengths a dumb poop private will go to for the kitty cat. That's something I was never told. I'm kind of assuming if the cops were called, she probably told them something like he showed up and caused trouble, so the friends intervened. But since I'm not sure what actually happened, I didn't include that. Brosidon62 reacted with. This reads like bad fan fiction. Finally, I can't believe I had to scroll this far down to find a comment calling out this obvious BS. Really bad fan fiction at that. It's like a 9th grader wrote it trying to sound cool. Shile3 reacted with. What I don't get is why the car was towed twice. They already towed it from the club, then towed it again the next day. Karen then proceeded to call the owner of the property, Morgan. And her friend was occupying. She told the owner about the car and asked if he wanted it towed. And why was she standing in a vacant lot that was right next to the towing place? And calling the place that was evidently right there? I believe it's a second car that was parked next door. Probably scoping out the impound lot to see how she can steal the pink car back. Grumpier Grinch reacted with. Great story but no ProRevenge, the main character of the story didn't do anything. The main character hired the tow company who came up with a plan to get his car back. The ProRevenge was Morgan ending up arrested after she tried to get the car back. And finally, Mr. Dabrix reacted with. The 2 most important lessons in this story are: always keep your car doors locked. And always keep your hat on you. Well, there you have it. A perfectly great question answered by a bunch of fine and honorable citizens. Help support this channel by smashing the like and subscribe buttons. And hit that silly little bell as well to ensure you get the latest videos as they come out. Fred is always finding stuff for me to post regularly. So this is Derek signing off. Thanks for watching. Good grief, it sounds like Fred is out of his pen again. I think he found more drama for me to share with you. See you soon.